Funny thing about the past, it has a way of showing up when you least want it to. And for Meghan Markle, the past comes with a name, Trevor Engelson. Long before castles, crowns, and royal titles, Meghan was married to Trevor, a Hollywood producer who knows her better than most. Their marriage didn't last, but Trevor didn't just walk away with memories. He walked away with stories. And according to people close to him, one story in particular stands out. It takes us back to Toronto in 2016, a night that Meghan probably hoped would stay buried forever. No headlines, no police reports, nothing on the record, just whispers. At that time, Meghan was right on the edge of her big royal breakthrough. Prince Harry had flown in to see her, sneaking away from palace life for what looked like a sweet, low-key visit. But behind the scenes, insiders claim what happened that night was far from a fairy tale. But here's where things get interesting. Sources say Meghan wasn't just hanging out with Harry that night. She was allegedly setting up what Toronto's party crowd called a run. And no, that doesn't mean grabbing takeout. It meant something way bigger and way riskier. We're talking indulgence, substances, the kind of scene Harry should have stayed miles away from. And then came the bombshell, a name nobody expected to hear. Princess Eugenie, Harry's own cousin. Her name was allegedly tied to that night's plans. Now, no one can say for sure if she knew anything or was directly involved, but even having her name linked to that night was enough to turn heads. Because think about it, one slip, one headline, and it wouldn't just have wrecked Harry and Meghan's new relationship. It could have dragged the entire royal family into a scandal. Whispers say things didn't go as planned that night. Something went wrong, a close call, the kind of slip that could have blown everything wide open. If it had leaked, Harry and Meghan's story might have ended before it even started. But it didn't. Why? Because the whole thing was buried. No police reports, no screaming tabloid headlines, not even a whisper in the morning papers. Just silence. And sometimes, silence says more than anything else. Insiders claim strings were pulled quickly, and pulled hard. The palace couldn't risk it. Harry's reputation was shaky already. Meghan was still building hers, and Eugenie's name was way too close to the fire. A cover-up was the only option. What could have been flashing cameras, mugshots, and front-page humiliation was instead wiped away overnight. That doesn't happen by accident. That takes influence, money, and serious power moving in the shadows. And right in the middle of it all, Meghan Markle, calm, composed, and, according to sources, surprisingly good at keeping the night alive and keeping it quiet. To really get why Meghan could move through a night like that so smoothly, you've got to look at the world she was living in at the time. Toronto wasn't just where she filmed Suits. It was also where she built a whole other life, one that didn't make it onto the cameras or back home to her family. At the center of that world was Soho House. And let's be clear, this wasn't your typical royal-style country club. This was the playground for the rich, the powerful, and the ones who wanted to push limits. Sure, from the outside, it looked like cocktails, music, and laughter. But behind closed doors, insiders say the real menu was a lot sharper. Cocaine delivered quietly, no questions asked, everything arranged with precision. And Meghan, according to people who partied with her, she wasn't sitting on the sidelines. She was the connector, the one everyone trusted to keep the night fueled. She didn't just know who wanted what. She knew how to get it, how much it would cost, and how to make sure it landed without leaving a trace. In that circle, her power wasn't just about looks or charm, it was access. People remembered her not as just another guest, but as the person who made the party happen, the one who made everyone feel untouchable, even when they were crossing lines. And once you see that side of Meghan, it makes sense why whispers about the Toronto night never really went away. Because this wasn't just a one-off slip. It was a glimpse of the Meghan that existed behind the Instagram quotes and charity speeches. The Meghan Trevor Engelson knew all too well. Long before Harry, there was Trevor, her first husband, the Hollywood producer who thought he was marrying a free-spirited actress. Their wedding in Jamaica back in 2011 should have been a tropical escape full of sunshine, beaches, and romance. Instead, it gave guests their first real peek at another version of Meghan. People who were there still talk about it. Not the vows, not the setting. What stuck in their memory was Meghan sitting down and rolling joint after joint. Over 100 of them. 100. And this wasn't just some quirky bride stunt or a one-time joke. It was organized, deliberate, making sure the atmosphere was set and every guest had what they wanted. At the time, people laughed it off, said it showed she was fun, easygoing, the life of the party. But when you put that next to the stories from Toronto years later, it feels less like a funny memory and more like a pattern. Meghan wasn't just joining in, she was running the show. She was the one supplying, curating, and making sure people remembered the night. And Trevor, he saw it all. He didn't just marry Meghan. He married into this version of her that knew exactly how to keep the party alive and how to make sure no one forgot it. Because here's the truth. Meghan was living multiple lives at once. To her Hollywood friends, she was the hustling actress chasing roles and talking about big dreams. To her family, she was the polished daughter keeping up appearances. To Harry, she was the confidant who made him feel safe from palace life. But in Toronto, inside the Soho House circle, Meghan was someone else entirely. Loud, confident, and according to people who were there, completely unfazed when lines of powder hit the table. Meghan was the one who made people feel like the night could go on forever, because she held the keys to whatever anyone wanted. And the genius of it wasn't just in what she provided, it was how she kept all her worlds separate. She knew exactly how much of herself to share with each crowd. Just enough so they felt close to her, without ever letting those versions overlap. That wasn't luck. That was skill, survival. And it's why the whispers about that Toronto night in 2016 felt so believable. Meghan had always been able to walk into any room and become exactly what the moment demanded. So when she met Prince Harry, she didn't have to pretend to be innocent. Harry already had a reputation. The Vegas photos, the late-night parties, the wild headlines. He wasn't some saint waiting to be rescued. He didn't need someone to tame him. What he needed was someone who could keep up, maybe even lead the way. And Meghan, she fit that role perfectly. According to people close to the circle, she gave Harry something he could never get inside the palace. Freedom. Freedom to indulge without headlines. Freedom to slip into the shadows without worrying who might sell the story. Meghan knew how to make risk feel safe. She knew how to hide the mess. And for Harry, who had lived his whole life under flashing cameras and watchful eyes, that was addictive. Meghan wasn't just his girlfriend. She was the one who could see his darker side and not blink. She didn't just tolerate it, she managed it, controlled it, made it feel untouchable. And that's why their bond felt so sudden, so intense, because under the fairy tale romance was something much more strategic. Meghan gave Harry the one thing he craved most, secrecy. And that didn't just make her a partner, it made her essential. But here's the thing, every legend leaves a trail. And Meghan's wasn't only in whispered stories, it was written on her face. Early photos show softer features, a nose that looked like her mother's, rounder, familiar. But as Meghan climbed higher, her look sharpened. Slimmer bridge, redrawn nostrils, polished angles. Officially, it was cosmetic upgrades. Just the usual Hollywood tune-ups. Nothing unusual for an actress on the rise. But people who knew her Toronto days whispered something else. Too much cocaine, they said, can eat away at cartilage, collapsing the nose from the inside. At that point, surgery stops being about vanity. It becomes about repair, about covering tracks. The claim is that Meghan's procedures weren't just beauty tweaks. They were fixes, burials, a way to erase a version of herself she couldn't afford to have follow her into the spotlight. Line up her photos over the years, and you don't just see reinvention. You see someone rewriting her face to bury her past. And the eraser didn't stop at the mirror. It stretched across her entire life. Over the years, Meghan's pattern became clear. Friends from Toronto vanished from her life overnight. College buddies who once shared memories were swapped out. Even family ties were cut, leaving silence where connection used to be. This wasn't playful reinvention, it was strategy. Build, erase, rebuild, erase. Each new world left no bridge to the old one, so when whispers from her past started resurfacing, Meghan could easily shrug and say, "That's not me." And in a way, she wasn't wrong. That version of Meghan no longer existed. Trevor Engelson saw it firsthand. He wasn't just erased as an ex-husband, he was erased as a witness. A witness to the Meghan who curated nights, supplied what others whispered about, and made atmospheres people never forgot. By cutting ties, Meghan made sure no one could stitch the fragments of her past together. But cracks eventually showed. In one interview, she claimed she'd never Googled Harry. In another, she described his favorite traits like she'd studied them. She said she felt isolated in the UK. Yet, records show trips to Italy, Amsterdam, New York. Then came the secrecy around Archie's birth. No full certificate, endless speculation. Even her own birth year became a question mark. Nothing new in Hollywood, but a huge problem for the royal family. And even the palace seemed to quietly rewrite her story. Her biography once painted her as a scholar, double major, fluent in languages, and decorated for humanitarian work. Slowly, all of it vanished. Now, it reads just one line. Meghan Markle, actress from Suits. That wasn't a mistake. That was deliberate. So, who is Meghan Markle? The Hollywood dreamer? The Duchess who walked into Windsor? Or the strategist insiders describe? The supplier, the eraser, the master of reinvention? The truth suggests she didn't stumble into destiny. She built it, step by step, nose by nose, circle by circle. And that's why the fascination never ends. For every polished charity speech, there's a whisper of what came before. For every photo in the spotlight, there's a shadow just out of frame. Trevor Engelson's memory of her rolling 100 joints in Jamaica, the whispers of that Toronto night in 2016, the faces quietly erased from her past. They all point to the same truth. Meghan Markle didn't just live a story, she designed one, and the haunting part? This only scratches the surface. The real question isn't what she's already hidden. It's what's still waiting in the dark, behind the mask, smiling in the spotlight while the real story lingers in the shadows.